Good evening and welcome to the Winchester Chamber of Commerce 11th Annual Outstanding Citizen Award Dinner. I'd like to introduce former recipients who are here with us tonight in the audience, and I'm going to go chronologically as they receive their award. The 1981 recipient, Sherman Whip Saltmarsh. And in 1985, the award was given to Clarence Beauregard. And in '86, our town engineer, Jake Chasha. Where's Jake? Thank you. And the perennial politician, Harry Sheffalo. Where's Harry out there? And in 1988, the award was given to Dr. Leonore Rich. And last year's recipient, I believe, is also with us, Dr. Donald McLean. Dr. McLean. The Commissioner of Food and Agriculture, Gus Schumacher.
Paul, Doris, I have many friends here. I was surprised to see so many of our agricultural community here. And I'm just delighted, Paul, that there's so many good farmers here in Winchester and Woburn, and Sandy Heimlich, and my old friend Guy and Gene Paris from Woburn, who some of the famous butternut squash growers of local fame. But Paul and I have known each other for many years. Paul used to come over to my dad's house in the 1940s and 1950s and talk butternut squash. Dad grew a lot of butternut squash, and Paul knew a good deal when he saw one, so he would come over and buy butternut squash from the Schumachers. But our links also extend very closely to Winchester. We came from a reasonably large family of 4, and my cousins in Winchester were from even a larger family of 5. We're all the same age, and we all competed against each other in basketball. My brother and I played against Bill and Hank and Dave in those years when you had Lynch and Bellino and Neeland, and I think you went on to the state championship and lost in overtime to Durfee. But we had great tilts against Winchester down at the high school here. I remember it very well. And I would always grab my cousin's drawers and try and pull it down. He'd kind of grab his pants and pull them up, and that way we beat them once. My brother said that was because of certain Schumacher tactics that weren't quite as appropriate as they are these days. But Paul and Doris used to watch those. It was quite a lot of fun. But I think that, I'll be very brief, that aside from the sports activities that we so engaged in, Paul has made great contributions to agriculture. Many of you probably wouldn't realize that in Massachusetts we actually have an increasing number of farmers and not decreasing. And that's been, a lot of the increases come in horticulture, which Paul and Doris and his greatly extended family now from Tewksbury to Falmouth, points in between, have fostered. They have not only growing their own, but done it technically very advanced. But Paul and his family won Small Entrepreneur of the Year award from Inc. magazine as one of the outstanding young entrepreneurs, and I consider Paul young, of the last 10 years. And I think that's a great honor for someone from agriculture to win that. He's extremely prominent in the Boston Flower Show every year. You see his great exhibits, that marvelous exhibit a few years ago that won all the awards, where you had that tropical rainforest that he and his colleague Brent Topman put together. So Paul has given us great beauty in this state, great innovation. He even hired my brother some many years ago and trained him. My brother's now a successful landscape contractor in Wayland. And then finally, Paul's international skills. Paul took me over to Holland one month a few years ago and educated me on Dutch beer. It was quite an education. We didn't suffer from jet lag. Remember that, Paul? We had a great time. Ending up, someone had to do it, right? But it was a marvelous time, and I've been terrifically honored to work with Paul and his family and his colleagues who are here. He's done a lot of contribution, not only, Father, to Winchester, but he's given a lot to the inner city of Boston. Many poor people have benefited from Mahoney's plants, flowers, and tomatoes, and grown them out in the inner city. Paul, you're being wonderful honor tonight, and Sam, I'm delighted to be here and to honor Paul Doris, his extended family, many of his colleagues, and fellow farmers. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Bringing the good wishes of the Jenks Center tonight is a member of the Board of Trustees and a past president of the Seniors Association, Polly McGuigan.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all to our lovely Jenks Center here to help celebrate Paul's award as Citizen of the Year. It was well-deserved, and we're all happy about it. I hope you all took a look around the grounds. Much of this is due to Paul Mahoney's generosity. When we first built the first building, Paul told me he would take care of the outside. He was going to do the KSC and would do ours. Unfortunately, somebody jumped the gun, and next thing I knew, they had a designer here. And for all the designing, at the end, I had to call him on a Friday and say, can you get this place sodded? Because Mrs. Jenks had somebody coming in to visit to see the place over the weekend. So that afternoon, he sent a crew down here, and they sodded the whole place. The rest was done by a designer. Cost us a fortune. But Paul's didn't cost us anything. When we built the second building, we talked about what we were going to do, and so one night I went over to his house. He was having his dinner. So I said, well, we're going to have to do something about the outside, Paul. Are you interested? Well, I'll take care of it, he said. He left his dinner, called one of his sons, and came over here. Went around the whole building, and then he came back. I was still at his house. And he said, oh, we know what we're going to do. Don't worry about it. Before we knew it, and within, I would say, a week, this place was landscaped completely. And as I say, if you take a look around, you'll see what a beautiful job was done. We're very proud of it, and we certainly are taking care of it. So with that, I want to say thank you also. We are related. That's why I'm here from the Senior Center.
The next speaker needs no introduction, literally, so therefore, Clarence Beauregard.
Well, here's how it came about. I was downstairs playing chess. I play every week. And I got this message sent down by Barbara Shanta, our coordinator. It says, Clarence, Kathy Alexander, and of course you all know who Kathy Alexander is. She's from the Chamber of Commerce, and she wants you to do a poem for Paul Mahoney for Citizens of the Year on May 23rd. Call her and so on. Well, I've been suffering from the shingles and more or less of a zombie for a couple of weeks, but I thought I'd better try it anyway. So I didn't write a poem. I tried to write a poem. But how can you rhyme anything with Mahoney? Now, and I tried it the Irish way, which I think it should be Mahoney, but that's even worse. So I worked at it a while. I tried sausage and Frankfurt and kielbasa and pastrami and stuff like that, but nothing that I could think of could make the rhyme. So I went off on a tangent this way. I said, so you bought seeds and it came up weeds? That's Paul Mahoney. So I said, you need rakes, pointed stakes, Paul Mahoney. Geraniums, chrysanthemums, Paul Mahoney. And here's one thing that is a surpriser. If your garden needs an energizer, you can get your fertilizer from Paul Mahoney. Now, I don't want to drag this out because that's kid stuff. That's not poetry. I wanted it to be something like an Irish ballad, you know. I will take you home, Kathleen, to where your heart has ever been. Excuse me. That hard French bread that I bought is in my throat. But, when Irish eyes are smiling, and so on. Nothing can compare with Irish ballads. So I wanted this poem to be real. And as long as I failed, I think I'll hang up now. But if any of you incipient poets out there can think of a word that rhymes with Mahoney, let's have it now. Now, I didn't say it, Paul. I didn't say it. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Clarence. See something? Clarence just set us all up, ladies and gentlemen. The representative from the town of Winchester is here. Our next speaker, Paul Casey.
I appreciate it. I took the long way up here, and it's going to be a long way to speakerhood, as Whip is pointing out, because I'm supposed to be voting right now. And he's saying to myself, Paul, just there goes that 100% voting record. There are a lot of people, and I know there's a plethora of people trying to get up here, many people trying to rehearse their memories of you, Paul. And I'm not alone. I remember you as a kid, and you're not going to remember me, but I tell you, a lot of people, when I was younger playing hockey, used to confuse me for one of the Mahoney boys, either Peter or Paul. And I'm not that good looking, but that's probably one of the reasons why they used to beat me up. But I just want to say one thing, and that comes from every young kid out there from 1960 on, just who knew you, Paul. No one has given more to Winchester, to the kids, and no one's been asked for more things and delivered. And you've delivered on all accounts. And I just remember you as a kid always out there at all the hockey games, at most of the events that I've ever partaken in. And I think that if anyone knows any of your kids, that it's reflective on you. Too often our honors go in descending honor form instead of ascending form, and in many ways, if you look at the Mahoney clan, I think it's truly a composite of their father. So I want to relay a resolution handed down and just signed by the Speaker of the House, and it says, resolution commending Paul J. Mahoney on the occasion of his being named Citizen of the Year by the Winchester Chamber of Commerce. Whereas Paul J. Mahoney has been named Citizen of the Year by the Winchester Chamber of Commerce and is being honored by his family, friends, and community, and whereas Mr. Mahoney has distinguished himself through his abundant donation of time and energy to serving the town of Winchester, ever conscious to his position as a businessman in the community, and whereas because of his integrity, keen sense of duty, and friendly, courteous manner, he has won the respect and admiration of everyone he has come in contact with, and whereas in his selfless devotion to civic duty, Paul Mahoney has beautified the town and state with his efforts and foliage, and whereas the actions of Paul Mahoney reflect the highest principles of humanity, charity, and love of one's neighbors and community. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts House of Representatives joins with the family and friends of Paul J. Mahoney and extends its congratulations on his award of Citizen of the Year by the Winchester Chamber of Commerce and its best wishes for good health and many years of future happiness. And be it further resolved that a copy of these resolutions be forwarded by the Clerk of the House of Representatives to Paul J. Mahoney, House of Representatives George Kavarian, Clerk of the House Bob McQueen, and State Representative Paul Casey. And on behalf of the state, Paul, I want to thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hope we make it back for that vote. Whip and I feel for you and Senator Albano these days. A very difficult time, and we certainly are glad we're not there. Thank you. Who says the Massachusetts House doesn't act? Look at this. Vote, for heaven's sakes. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is the town manager of Winchester, and he's been under a lot of pressure lately, as you well know. And he's literally carried the world on his shoulders for the past several weeks, and I asked Father McCann earlier whether he would give him some spiritual help, and I noticed he's been talking to him a lot over here at dinner. Because of this heavy, serious world, I was happy to know that the subject matter of his presentation tonight will be ducks. Chad Moore. You're on.
Thank you, Sam. Paul Mahoney, honored guests. I didn't really expect to be speaking tonight. In fact, I'm very surprised that I'm at the head table at all. And the only reason that I am is that my wife is out of town on business, and when I came in, Kathy said, well, there's a seat for you at the head table. So that's the only reason that I'm here at the head table, and I didn't expect to speak, but as long as I'm up here, I might as well say a few words. As I mentioned, my wife is on business. She's out of state, and the reason that she's on business is because when the override in Winchester failed a few months ago, I forced her out to take a second job. Actually, in another matter is, while she was away, I was going through the checkbook, and I was shocked. I was really shocked. I looked through the checkbook, and I don't know if you can believe it or not, but I found out that last year my wife spent more money at Mahoney's than I paid in property tax. So the real reason that she took the second job was to support her Mahoney habit. I think that people often ask me what are some of the problems that we have in town government and what we have to deal with on a regular basis. And I think we're all aware of the so-called fiscal crisis. Although I don't really refer to it as a fiscal crisis, I think it's really an opportunity for the town to come together and really solve its problems and really set the priorities for what the future of the town should be. And that has been one issue that we've dealt with. And there's another issue that we've been dealing with lately that has brought on a lot more interest and public concern, and that relates to the ducks. Now, I don't know if you followed this at all, but we've been talking about whether or not we're going to bring the ducks back to the town hall or not. And the champion behind bringing the ducks back to the town hall has been a gentleman by the name of Dan Chain. And I think that everybody, some of you people here may know who Dan Chain is. He's a very serious-minded public servant, and he is very interested in the ducks coming back to the town hall and other issues that he gets involved in. And last week in the pouring rain, there were these two geese that were out behind the town hall, and they were in the pouring rain, and they were quacking at the back door. And I opened the window and I looked out, and here's these geese, and they're coming at the door, and they're quacking. What the heck are they saying? So I opened the window and I listened really carefully. And one of the talents that I have that not many people realize is that I can interpret goose talk. I can translate it into English. And you know what the geese were saying? They were saying, "Can Dan Chain come out and play?" Seriously, though, the issue, the selectmen voted the other night, and now we have brought the Ducks back. They came back to the town hall today. We had the high school band. There was a parade down Main Street. Dan Chain led the charge, and the band was playing "Be Kind to Your Web-Footed Friends." The thing I think that's important, Dan Chain talked about the geese when he was before the selectmen, the ducks and the geese when he was before the selectmen. And one of the reasons that we wanted to bring these the ducks back was because of the pride and tradition that they instilled in the town. And Dan was concerned that if the ducks weren't there, that something of the town, something of value that people had cherished for many years, of having their children feed the ducks and so forth, was going to disappear. There are many traditions in this town that have evolved over the years. And one of the things that distinguishes Winchester from many of the communities in the Commonwealth is the beauty of this community. If we drive down many of the streets, we realize that at some time in our history, people took the time to plant a tree, whether it be a street tree or whether it be in their yards. They also took the time to landscape their properties and so forth to improve the overall quality of life. And I think that Paul Mahoney's contribution to this has been that he has provided many of us with the opportunity to enrich our homes while he got rich. And there's a saying that I've seen on the side of on signs and so forth that say, "Roses whisper what words may never say." And I think that Paul Mahoney and the whole effort through the Garden Center and the work that he's done, not only in Winchester but around the Commonwealth, has been saying it with flowers, saying it with the natural vegetation and so forth to beautify Winchester and other areas in the Commonwealth. That's a contribution that is very positive for all of us, and I think that we all should be thankful that Paul Mahoney is Winchester's own, and I think we should be really grateful for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chad.
Part of your town, a picture of the things you do, working 24 hours every day to keep the signal coming through. We're Continental, we put everything on the line. Continental, we put everything on the line for you.
Listen, I knew Paul for 10 years before I knew him. Okay, I used to go to Mahoney's and I didn't know where anything was. And half the time there was this guy in cords and a green t-shirt. Say, just a minute, he'll help you. And he'd get some guy to help me. This went on and on and on. Now, he runs a fantastic business. And, you know, it's not easy being green. We know that. But I really don't know how much he knows about his business. And that can put a lot of pressure on a guy. So I just have a helpful thing I brought for you, Paul. And you can wear this, and it'll just take the pressure off you when people like me come along. This is one of these wonderful buttons you can see from a distance, and it says, "What do I look like? An information booth?" So you just wear that. Now listen, Paul, you've already been hearing tonight that this is a talented guy. And I would like to think we're reasonably good friends. I suspect he has nightmares about this liberal lady the way Mike Barnacle does about Evelyn Murphy, but he's really very nice to me. And you know, he, unlike the environmental president who's as environmental as an aerosol can, Paul Mahoney really cares about the outdoors. Anyone who owns half of Nova Scotia cares for the outdoors. And one of his favorite things is whitewater canoeing. Okay, and he does that once in a while. He's terrific at it. And several years ago, he was on the Saco River. I have my informants. And this was a great river trip, but they were seen, okay? Not all the Saco River is in the wilderness. And they were met by the Stadies at the end of this trip because Paul's canoe was seen. This is springtime, no hunting season. His canoe was seen with a body across the bow, game, So they were there to hammer Paul and collect the game. And, it wasn't game at all. I'll show you what it was. The guy should have gotten an award because he doesn't live. And he hauled them all out, every single can. Now, the other thing Paul does on river trips, in case you ever sign up with him, is play poker. And I understand this guy, doesn't mess around with little petunias in the poker pot there in the backwoods. So be careful. Anyhow, Paul runs a big operation. We all know that. There's nothing that grows and blossoms that Paul Mahoney doesn't have. But he's got one problem group over that place, okay? And I refer to them, and I should say us, as the steely-eyed suburban Matronicus, On the first warm, growing weekend of the season, those of us who go to Mahoney's make Filene's basement look like a Sunday prayer meeting. And this is the group, and I admit I'm one of them. You get up on Monday morning, and who do you call when you need a zing in your parade? Who do you call when you need to raffle good-looking plants? Who do you call when you want centerpieces? Who do you call when you want anything? You call Paul Mahoney. And this guy responds to the big gimme every time. Even to Kitty Dukakis, who wanted to beautify the Route 3 island, right? By the time the MWRA got done with our rates last year, the poor guy drilled his own well, and then he let Paul Levy come on his property to give him an award. You probably saw it in the paper for saving the MWRA a bundle. So this guy is really something, and the stress must be awful. But actually, to be more serious, I really am here to thank Paul, because 12 years ago this year, we formed, well, I say we, some of us, a new chamber was formed. I was one of the only non-business people to be on that board. And in looking at what we needed to do and what we need to do to respond to businesses, the big thing was the sign bylaw. And they asked me to coordinate that, and I did. And one of the first people I called was Paul Mahoney, and he hung in on that whole 18 months till we went to town meeting and passed it. He's been an invaluable member for us, and I can't think of a person who more richly deserves the Citizen of the Year award. Congratulations, Paul.
Thank you very much, Judy. Our next speaker is the chairman of Town Day this year, which is coming up June 2nd. And we can use all the help we can get physically and financially as well. But David Pywell tonight is going to speak as a parent in the town of Winchester. David Pywell.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you all for coming tonight. As chairman of Town Day Winchester, we've been involved with putting on a party for approximately 6,000 to 10,000 people for the last, I think, 17 years. And as a member of the Town Day Committee for all those years, we've turned to Paul Mahoney and the Mahoney family for donations, support, and help all of those years. And they've come through. To give you a quick example, just a couple years ago, Paul spent countless hours restoring his old Model A that was the pride of the flower show in Boston. And everybody throughout the state commented on how nice it was. And I said, Paul, we have a disc jockey showing up at, it was approximately 6 o'clock on a Friday night to start our first block dance. And I said, we need something to put the DJ on. Paul said, Dave, I've got 2 mechanics just finishing this truck. You can have it. And Pudge Flynn from WHDH loved it. The whole town loved it. And again, Paul came through and supported us that way. As a parent of the town, I can say that growing up in Winchester was a pleasure, and I can remember as a graduate of Winchester High School, most of my friends back then working for, well, I should say probably the highest wages around back then, in the 60s, Paul, was about, what? They all worked at Mahoney's, and many of you out there don't know that because you see so many different people now working there. But Mahoney's was the only place where a kid in high school could get a job, and he supported countless kids during that period, and they all appreciated it and learned quite a bit from it. Myself, I had the fortunate to have an ice cream truck back in the 60s, 1965, when I graduated from junior high school. Paul Mahoney allowed me to come onto his property and sell. And during those 4 years stopping in there, I probably did my whole business in one day right at Mahoney's. And it was a great way to spend the day, was going into Mahoney's and selling ice cream to all his people and his crews. And I did that for 5 years. So through the 60s and the 70s, and again, the 80s and 90s, Paul Mahoney has served me well. And I should say he's serving our children well also, because I think one of the things that wasn't mentioned tonight earlier was that the kids of the high school with the senior prom being done in the tent, Paul Mahoney puts together a show that's unsurpassed. And I think the parents that get down there and take a look at that ought to be grateful to the Mahoney family and organization for what they do to the senior class each year. And on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, my family, myself, Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is the present chairman of the Board of Selectmen in the town of Winchester, Steve Powers.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure to explain how I ended up sitting down there and the town manager ended up sitting up here. And I think I'll do that. I had a phone call today from Joan Murphy, who does an excellent job for us, and Joan said, Steve, you have a spot at the head table to speak, but Reggie is out of town. And I said, well, okay, that's fine. We'll put Chad at the head table, and I'll sit with Sue in the audience because my wife is here. And at that, I said, because that's only fitting because he gets paid and I do not. I also would like to comment on my colleague's comment. I would become the conservative member of the Board of Selectmen or the moderate member as opposed to the liberal member. That's all in jest because we do actually get along without any problems, I hope. Paul and I go back a good many years because I grew up 500 yards away from Paul and the family. And I think we go back to pond days, we go back through the pansy patch days when that's all that was there, and people won't remember that. I would like to call the attention of the audience with a lot of Winchester people here that it is indeed a pleasure for Paul finally to be named Man of the Year with the past recipient's name of you townspeople, Harrison Chadwick, Whip Saltmarsh, Dr. Kaufman, John Sullivan, Clarence Beauregard, Jake Chacha, Harry Sheffalo, Dr. Lenore Rich, and Dr. Donald E. McLean. I believe that is indeed an honor well fitting of Paul. I also would like to make a comment. David Pywell sort of stole one of my lines. One of my ex-colleagues on the school committee, Catherine Alexander, and I were trying to decide when we restricted the proms in Winchester to the tent, and I think that was 1986. And I had the pleasure of chaperoning that, and let me tell you that Paul Mahoney's generosity at that enabled the students of this town and the children to remain in the tent due to his generosity, because it was indeed like being at any hotel, and I would welcome all you townspeople, like the school committee did, to appear there, I think, between 4 and 6 p.m., and I think that is a civic responsibility that his family has undertaken, along with many of the others, the common projects, etc., that I think should not go unnoticed. And Paul is very quiet about these types of things. I can also tell you, as having been a hockey coach of one of Paul's kids, he was a pleasure because he never asked me why my kid wasn't playing more. So my also one antidote that I might have that I got from Russell is that Paul and Doris, whether he knows it or not, when they were first married, are living in half a house that my family also has half of the other house on Pond Street. So we do have that much in common. That aside, I would like to congratulate Paul for continuing to make Winchester the beautiful place that it is, and also for his involvement with the past recipients, because I believe he belongs with the past recipients. And with that, I'd like to present a citation from the Board of Selectmen. The citation reads, "The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. Be it hereby known to all that the Board of Selectmen of the town of Winchester hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to Paul J. Mahoney in recognition of the 1990 Citizen of the Year Award, given this 23rd day of May, 1990, signed by Stephen L. Powers, William O'Leary, Robert Deering, Judith Musia, and Thomas Schmidt of the Board of Selectmen." Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Like Paul, there are many individuals who own businesses in this town who contribute much to the activities of this town and the quality of life of this town. But there are many who own businesses out of this town who also contribute heavily to the town through those businesses. And I see many in the audience tonight. There are two I'd like to single out. One is the president of a worldwide and renowned company, Steinway & Sons. And through his efforts and the efforts of many people, there was a fundraising effort recently that brought a Steinway Grand to this town that is literally being enjoyed today and will be enjoyed for generations to come. Bruce Stevens, the president of Steinway. And another gentleman owns several very well-located McDonald's in this state, and you probably have seen much of this products around the town at various fairs and events, and he has given these facilities, to many events over the years and deserves some attention. Bob King. The next speaker is a very close personal friend of our honored guest, as are the following speakers. 35 years ago, this gentleman told me that he met Paul Mahoney. He said he met him when Paul was shoveling his driveway. And considering what Paul does for a living, I couldn't help but wonder what it was that Paul was shoveling. Our next speaker may tell us. Skip DeNatale.
Well, good evening. I'm going to try to remember as much as I can say without looking at my notes, but the object of this evening's gathering, of course, is to pay homage to our honored guest. Pay homage. That means to banter slightly about the truth. And our guest, in so doing, we will bestow upon him all the praise that he's worthy of receiving. A little background on Paul, as you all know. It was a bleak and overcast day many years ago in the year of the dragon, 1935, when Paul honored this earth with his presence. The name of Paul J. Mahoney is well known to everybody. But for years, everybody wondered what the J was for. No one ever realized until one day when I'm walking through his place, it suddenly dawned on me. The J stands for jovial. Have you ever seen him as he's walking around with his hands in his pockets, with that forlorn look on his face? Well, for those of you who had an opportunity to observe what I'm talking about, you'll know exactly what I mean. For those who haven't, better take advantage of it. Right from the beginning, of course, Paul was always a very exciting and exacting person. In fact, the first words out of his mouth were, "Let's have a six-pack." And give me a silver bullet, please. Before I forget, most people have their own idea about the superstitions surrounding the Friday the 13th. Well, we've got to go back to 1935 for that one again, because it was on Friday the 13th as Paul was born. And as we know, Friday has never been the same since that date. Paul went through the Winchester High School system, as you know. He got his letter. He was a varsity hockey player, varsity football player, and it was there that he first met Doris, later to become Mrs. Mahoney. And 4 years at Boston College, and he received his B.S. in economics. That was in 1957. Now, in Paul's case, for most of you, B.S. means Bachelor of Science. Now, I'm not going to say what you think I'm going to say. In Paul's case, B.S. means Boy Scout. And having attained the Eagle status, he's been flying high ever since. In 1959, Paul and Doris finally tied the knot. Now, they have 6 great kids, as you've all had a chance to meet, I'm sure. I'm a little concerned, however, with this large family, and they're all being involved in the business. He must either be a Republican or he doesn't have any contracts with the state, because as much as I read Howie Carr's column, I haven't seen his name in it yet. I probably won't either, Paul. On the other hand, I have word that Norma Nathan, in her own way, has her eye out for you, Paul. And she wants you to advise her on some social ins and outs and do's and don'ts. I'm sorry. You can't hear me? I'm sorry. Well, as Paul entered the business world, he worked very hard. In summers, he would plant, and in winters, he would plow. To cite one occasion of how much he would apply himself, during one snowstorm, Paul was on a machine for 36 hours. When he finally finished, his feet were so numb that he couldn't feel them. And as Doris tells it, unfortunately, the numbness did not stay only in his feet. But, you know, what can I say? Even to this day, I don't believe Paul has gotten a driver's license. Now, to most people, the telephone is a must, especially those in business. To Paul, the telephone is a must-not. Now, anyone who's tried to reach Paul by telephone knows exactly what I mean. You start out with Mary, and she does a wonderful job covering up for him. He's busy, he's got these phones, he's got this. Okay, Mary, whatever you say. Finally, you get tired of calling back. You've called too many times to count. And if you're fortunate enough to make contact with Paul, the first word one hears from his docile tones are, "Hello, what's happening?" But, you know, what can I say? Therefore, I was quite surprised one day last week when I arrived at my office to find out that I had not one but 2 calls from himself. Whoa. And they were on my desk waiting for me. My first thought was, well, the mountain has come to Muhammad. But my second thought, which was later confirmed, was, what does he want? That evening, we were supposed to attend a meeting together, and he wanted to check the time that I was going to pick him up. Now we get into the PMT. I'll explain that in a minute. So before I gave him my answer, I quickly thought of past and similar experiences. And I said, well, the meeting's at 6 o'clock. If I tell him to be at 5, he won't be ready at 5:30. I better tell him 4. So I told him 4, and Frank Engel and Paul and I drove out of Socrates Drive on PMT, Paul Mahoney time, at 5 o'clock. We finally got to the meeting. By the way, we got there on time at 6 o'clock, so everything worked out well. Now, among his other accomplishments, Paul is a renowned in international circles. I can attest to that. I've been to Europe and South America and around with him. And he's also known for his diplomatic approach to situations. As a matter of fact, James Baker asked Mr. Mahoney to accompany him on his recent trip to Russia. Believe me, Paul's approach in negotiations would have been somewhat more direct, like, why can't we get this done and do it now this way? But Mr. Baker didn't have Paul's company. As many of you know, Paul is quite an outdoorsman. Hunting, fishing, skiing are among his sports. Have you ever skied with Paul? Well, I have. It's quite an experience. Paul's skiing is unparalleled, and so his skis sometimes. They point in all kinds of directions. But by the way, most people prefer to ski on sunny, balmy days. But Paul, he prefers to ski on drizzly, overcast days. And that's where you'll find him most days on the slopes, on drizzly, overcast days. His reasoning is simple. Who else but someone like him, and there aren't many, would ski on the slopes in such weather? And besides, there aren't very long lift lines those days either. I think we've got him to skiing in the middle of the week now, too, because he finds out that the midweek passes are pretty good deals. Now, Paul becomes so involved in what he's doing that sometimes things get by him. We both happen to be members of the same organization, the Ancient and Honorable Artillery Company of Massachusetts. And in last week's election, Paul wanted to become First Sergeant of Infantry. Now, loosely translated, that means he wanted to be Top Sergeant, numero uno. And he worked very hard. A lot of us worked for him also. Now, he won that election by the largest vote and the largest plurality in the history of our venerable organization. 497 votes out of 563 votes cast. That's quite a tribute and an accomplishment. I think he would have gotten 498, but he was so busy campaigning he forgot to vote for himself. But it's still a meritorious thing. Okay, and final tribute this evening, Paul. And I've put together something for him. Now, as a background for those of you in the audience who are not familiar with Paul's habits, let me say that thinkers have various ways of occupying their time. Some doodle, some stare into space, some daydream, and some twiddle their thumbs. Not Paul. Paul has an affinity to matchsticks. He'll stick it in either ear at any time. And you can always tell when Paul is thinking. You can't tell what he's thinking or to what degree he may be thinking of it. But he's always thinking. So at this time, I would like to present him with the Paul J. Mahoney 1990 Matchstick Thinkers Award for bigger and better thoughts. Yeah, wait. You see this? This goes like this. That's how it goes. Now, in closing, I would just like to paraphrase Will Rogers' statement that there can't be many men who, having met you, couldn't help but like you. Thank you for being our friend. Speaking for myself, thank you for being my friend. Good luck and God bless.
Thank you very much, Skip. The next speaker is also a very close friend of our honored guest. In fact, so close that rumor has it that this individual doesn't talk to anyone without Paul Mahoney screening the call. And I found it out yesterday when I called the office, and Paul answered, and again screened the call. Couldn't quite figure it out, but his son helped me with it tonight. The next speaker you see, ladies and gentlemen, is Larry Ryan, the accountant for that business for 30 years. Larry, where are you?
Well, Paul, it sounds like it's all got to come out tonight. Skip, that was great. Yeah, I've been Paul's CPA since 1964. We're still trying to clear 1965 with IRS. I'm going to have some ammunition tomorrow, though. I've heard about so much money. You know, Paul has always explained to me that Mahoney's is a charitable organization. I never see any sales. All I see are expenses. And it's a hard time explaining to IRS what this is all about. But I'm going to take the guest register here tonight of all the people who have attended and received all these goods for nothing. And I'm sure I can sell IRS on the fact that we're charitable and we really owe them nothing. A couple of things previous speakers mentioned brought a couple of things to mind, especially the gentleman on McDonald's. Now, Paul and I, we travel. You know, thank God for my wife Dee, because when you work for Paul Mahoney, you keep, you know, your bag packed all the time, and you're kind of on the road quite a bit. But Paul's got, we travel like from Winchester and sometimes up to Tewksbury. And I remember one day on just a regular visit, we were going up to Tewksbury to Peter's nursery up there and check things out. And on the way, Paul got hungry. I never get hungry, but Paul insisted we stop and get something. But Larry, let's not waste any time. So we pulled into the McDonald's. You know, and I drive one of these big German luxury cars and all that stuff, and we pulled up to the McDonald's window, and I said to Paul, "What do you want?" He says, "You know, a chocolate frap, a cheeseburger, a couple other things." And I usually just follow along. I've learned this a long time ago. I say, "The same, I'll take the same." Try not to waste any time with Paul, you know. So the girl's very nice, and they did an excellent job up there, you know, giving us the food and all. So I take the window opens, I take the dinner into the car, and I look at Paul and I say, "Paul, you got the money?" He says, What do you mean? What money?" I said, "Well, I haven't got any money." He says, "You don't have any money, and you invited me to dinner?" I said, Paul, they don't take plastic here. You got to pay cash." He said, "I don't have any cash. I had to give the hamburger back to the girl." One of the most embarrassing days of my life. Well, anyhow, yeah, you know, I get, looking back, yeah, I go way back with Paul, and gee, back to '64, a long time, and a lot of things. It's made my practice something that otherwise it wouldn't have been. And traveled a lot with his family. I think trying to count the countries and the places, over 23, 27 countries maybe, that I've visited with him, in different business trips and personal trips. And if you know Paul Mahoney, you know, yes, it's business, but foremost there is family, and it's really been great for me to not only work for him and Paul and Doris, but for his children, the second generation, and he is my best friend, and I'm glad I know Paul Mahoney.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is was a classmate of Paul Mahoney's at Boston College in 1957, which I guess is 10 years after Whip. Yeah. He's the former director of public relations at Boston College and now enjoys working with the college in the fundraising area. Please welcome Ed Miller.
Thank you, Sam. Father McCann, Doris, guest of honor, my good buddy Paul. Friends of Paul Mahoney, distinguished members of the Board of Selectmen and other politicians from the great town of Winchester. It's really a pleasure to be here, especially as Sam said, because we were classmates at Boston College from 1953 to 1957, and we've been friends ever since. And at the table I'm sitting at with my wife Patty and Jim McIntyre, also class of 57, and Paul McAdams, who was perhaps even closer to our guest of honor, Paul, during the undergraduate years than I was, because they were in the College of Arts and Sciences. And we used to call them poets when we were in the School of Management. I was CBA, College of Business Administration, as it was known then, and they used to give us the needle about taking our lunch pails to class every day. And of course, we all commuted in those days, not like Paul's 6 children, 4 of whom are out of Boston College, and 2 of whom are undergraduates right now. And Patty and I just had our 9th graduate just this past Monday. So between the Mahoneys and the Millers, we've made a contribution to Boston College. But it's a great school, and it's been great to me for all my working years. And it's been great because of alumni like Paul McAdams and Paul Mahoney. And Jim McIntyre, who works there for many years, as I have, can attest to that. And on Monday, as bad as the day was out there for commencement, and thank God we had that beautiful Conti Forum where Tom Brokaw spoke to the senior class, and the kids received their degrees, and it was just a marvelous, marvelous setting. But the next day, I drove around the campus Tuesday morning, and I think it's the only time in the last 2 weeks that we've had sun for about a half an hour or an hour. And one of my daughters was going out to pick up some books at that beautiful new Tip O'Neill library, and I was driving around the campus as I waited for her. And it is probably the most beautiful campus in America anyway, and I'm a bit prejudiced. I'm sure that you will allow me that, but it is a beautiful campus. I think most of you know it, and the Gothic buildings and the blue sky and so forth. But the thing that has caught me, and I've had the pleasure of watching this grow for all these years, that Paul has been such a good alumnus, and we've heard of all the wonderful things that he's done for the town of Winchester and the elderly citizens of this beautiful building. And I've seen the Rotary there as I come over from Milton many times to visit Paul and his family and his beautiful nurseries. And the Rotary is beautiful at any time of year, Christmas or in the spring or in the fall. I've seen the sections of the highway where he's had the adopt a plant, thanks to Gus Schumacher and some of the other nurserymen, and he's done a beautiful job there. But I think he probably has beautified the campus of Boston College more than any other person I know. It was absolutely resplendent this spring, and it gets more beautiful every year, because every year he gives us more and more beautiful flowering plants and shrubs and evergreens and just the most beautiful arrangements that you can imagine. And the azaleas are all out in full bloom right now. The place has the Mahoney's mulch that just where you need it. The rhododendrons are just starting to bud, and the tulips and all the other bulbs are up, and it is just magnificent. And we at Boston College really appreciate what a great alumnus Paul has been. That's his contribution to BC every year. But as I said, I've learned some things tonight. I know from Father and his beautiful church at St. Eulalia's, what he's done up there. I've been privileged with Patty to go to most of the weddings of all these handsome boys and girls out here, Peter and Paul and Susan and Tommy to come, I hope. I hope I'm on that list, Tom. And and of course the two undergraduates at Boston College now, Michael and Laurie, and I'm sure that that they'll continue in the tradition. It's a great family. He has a marvelous wife who all of you know and love from the town of Winchester, and she's the rock behind the Rocky Ledge. And Paul is... Paul is one of the greatest guys God ever made and one of the greatest guys I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. I'll tell you one quick story about him because I thank God it didn't turn into a roast. I couldn't have gotten up here and roasted anyone, especially Paul Mahoney. We came here to toast him, not to roast him. But just a few weeks ago, we go to many athletic events because he's a great old hockey player, and he still plays once in a while, and you see him beat up a couple of years ago with a stick in the mouth or some stitches across the eye, but I think finally he's hung up his skates. But at any rate, we still love to go to events. We go to Boston College football games, we go to Red Sox games, and being a great hockey fan, I think we've caught almost every Bruin playoff game, and we'll be going tomorrow night with God's will, and I hope they win too. But at any rate, a couple of weeks ago, we went on a Friday night, and I told Patty, my wife and the mother of those 9 kids, that I was going to have a beer or two with Paul after the game, and she thought that was okay. And we met at a little place right around the corner from the garden, and some of the Mahoney boys were there, and my son John D. was there, and the first thing you know, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. And Paul wasn't ready to go home. I was, but he wasn't. But anyway, I finally got home, and it wasn't really, Patty wasn't really too upset, but just a few nights later, the kids were taking us out to dinner. Some of them took us out on Saturday night for Mother's Day, and the rest of them took us out on Sunday for brunch. So Saturday night, we were coming back about 9 o'clock, and I was really tired. And they wanted to stop for someplace else for a nightcap. And I said, why don't you drop me off, and you guys can go on alone. So Patty said, oh, you're not with Paul Mahoney tonight? She said, you don't get tired when you're with Paul Mahoney, do you? And I don't think anyone could. Paul, this is a great tribute by the Chamber of Commerce, and I congratulate the town and its wisdom. And I hope you have a marvelous evening, you and your family. You richly deserve it, and it's been my pleasure to be here.
Kelly, we need to talk.
We just came from a parent-teacher conference.
Mrs. Jones thinks you're a very bright student, but you need to pay more attention to your homework.
But, Dad... Let's make a deal. You set aside enough time to do your homework, and we'll take the time to check it with you every night.
Okay, Mom.
And the next time we talk to Mrs. Jones, she'll be as proud of you as we are.
Today's students need all of us.
We have a very special letter that was sent and received by Kathy, and I showed it to Paul. He thought it would be a good idea to read it because it's from a friend of his from the town of Winchester, Max McCreary, and it just turns out that Max McCreary's mother's here tonight. And Paul thought it would be a good idea if he heard it, and you heard it, and she heard it. And I have a special friendship with this gentleman, too, because he went to a great university as well called Brown down in Providence, Rhode Island. Paul Mahoney, Man of the Year dinner. Dear Mo, I had planned to attend your much-deserved award dinner until unavoidable business demanded me to be in New York City for the entire day. My memories go back to 6th grade, your first year as King of the West Side, when the Ginfield gang used to travel on foot to the West Side Field to play sandlot football against Mahoney's gang. Ginfield featured Joe Donlin, Kit Carlton, Smitty Clark, Spider Howard, and Dick Beck, along with yours truly. Your team had Phil Towie, Metzi Metzakappa, Marvin Wilson, Roy Lawson, and Todd Nealon. You would appear from your little farm, plot in the woods, behind the field with a wheelbarrow full of vegetables. After a rough game of tackle played with any equipment, you would take your wheelbarrow out to Cambridge Street and sell your produce. You've come a long way since those days of 45 years ago, and we're all proud of you. Best wishes, Max. The next speaker is the oldest son of our honored guest, Paul Mahoney, Jr. And Paul is a captain in the Air National Guard down the Cape, and he flies F-15 fighters. And I understand that his dad's pretty proud of that. I asked Paul Jr. yesterday what he did down the Cape, and he said, I run the small store, he said. Have any of you seen this small store down at Falmouth? It is so small that Paul commutes in his F-15 to it every day. Paul had some certain sentiments to express, and before he comes up, I want to thank him personally for all the help he gave me and educating me and all the people who came before us tonight and who had things to say. He just really helped me understand what this was all about. Paul Mahoney.
Well, it's either going to be a lot of fun or it's going to get me fired here. First thing before I start on this guy over here who, unlike what I've heard earlier about toasting him, I think he has to be roasted a little bit here. But before we do that, I got to ask Larry. Larry, in our meetings, how can we keep your speeches as short as this one you made tonight? If I could figure that out, it would make a lot of people in this crowd happy, I'll tell you that. And talking about this crowd here, I see an awful lot of Mahoney's faces out here tonight, and I was just wondering, can we get a show of hands how many people out here that my dad said punch in and go down to the Jenks Center? I'm trying to figure out, I've never seen this before, how you get so many Mahoney's people in one location where there's no beer. Can't figure it out, but anyways, obviously, me and my dad, we go way back. And there's a lot of different things, different ways to look at how we do go back. And one of those ways is the way we've always worked together. And I have to thank him for being kind enough to give me my first job ever. And I remember that quite well. A few people out here might remember also when I was given that first job, it was basically a broom was stuck in my hand when I was just about old enough to walk. I had to lean on the broom to keep from falling over. And I got paid a nickel a night to sweep out the farm stand. So as Guy Paris can tell you, that held me in good stead later on. But worked out okay. Every 2 days I'd have enough money to go buy myself a candy bar in the greenhouse. Before long, I got wise to that along with my brother Peter, who helped me figure out that we could very quickly accumulate a lot more cash at the nursery. And instead of working for my dad, just go over and dip our hands into the fountains over there and take all the charity coins that were tossed in by everybody. So I guess he taught us a couple things one way or another. But through the years, we've had a lot of fun working together, doing different things. And it's really unique to work in a family business like ours, especially with so far everybody being involved very strongly in the business, from myself, my brother Peter, my sister Susan, my brother Tom, and my brother Michael and sister Laurie, who are still at Boston College right now. Have fun, guys, because it stops pretty quick. They're having fun. You don't have to tell them that. But we have a lot of fun working together, too, and it's really interesting. We get together in meetings, as Larry can attest to. We yell and scream at each other, and things get pretty hot-headed once in a while. But when it's all over, we all kick back and hopefully make one or two decisions. And then after the decisions are made, then comes second-guessing time. As Skip pointed out earlier, my dad's got this interesting fascination with matches, or if matches aren't handy, then a blade of grass will do. And usually after decisions are made in a meeting, the next step is, so, Paul, what do you think? You think that might work out all right? What do you think, Peter? Think that'll work okay? Hey, Susan, you think you should maybe take those pots in the florist and put them out, move them up another 3 feet? And Tom, go out and get the carts, will you? So that's how business is done at Mahoney's. There's a lot of other interesting things that have just trying to think back on how things are different at Mahoney's. You've heard a lot tonight about, this and that about Mahoney's, but there's a lot of interesting things that have happened through the years, both at Mahoney's, with the family, and so many things intertwined together. Sometimes all happens as one. There's one thing that kind of sticks in my mind is we've tried to present various images to the public through advertising or whatever we're doing. And some of the most interesting things happen at Christmas. I have two quick stories just to relate. I hope some people forgive me on this, but that there's one, we ran some advertising on the television a number of years back, and the TV ad we ran ended up with this French-Canadian type guy in a field of Christmas trees, which happened to be in Winchester instead of Canada like it was supposed to be. And the guy ended up his commercial, the ad that we're running, saying, "And Paul Mahoney will cut no tree before it's time." Well, sure enough, Friday nights at Mahoney's during the Christmas season, as many people here might know, can get pretty interesting. After people cash their paychecks, stop at the bar for a few beers or something, now it's time to buy a Christmas tree at Mahoney's. So this guy comes in, walks through the gate, and we have the little table trees set up there in the corner. They're about 2 to 3 feet tall. Guy stops, looks at him, and goes, "Geez, Paul Mahoney sure cut that damn Christmas tree before it's time there." So that's not the end of it. Friday nights in Mahoney's at Christmas time keep getting better. A little later on that night, the guy comes in, spends about an hour and a half picking out the perfect tree to bring home to his family. Brings it out to the main gate, and we have one of our wonderful employees out there, who I won't mention by name. He's out there just waiting and willing to help anybody that comes through. And my dad was there at the time, kind of staying back out of the limelight a little bit. And this guy brings his Christmas tree up by the cashier booth there, puts it down on the ground, and pays the cashier. Turns around to go grab his Christmas tree, and one of our lovely employees comes over. "Hey, I'll help you with that." This guy comes up. Now, this is no lie. This guy comes up, reaches over. This guy had dipped into the whiskey barrel a little earlier in the evening. Reaches over to pick up this guy's Christmas tree. His pants drop to his ankles. Really. The customer's horrified. Poor guy's there like, wow, I mean, I didn't come to Mahoney's for this. It didn't stop there. This guy goes over to retrieve his pants at his ankles, promptly stumbled over himself, fell on the guy's tree, broke all the branches, and for one of the only times that I've ever seen it happen, Paul Mahoney was then no longer had anything to do with Mahoney's Rocky Ledge. He just... It happens, I'll tell you. But I thought I'd relate just a couple more things. Again, everybody says a lot about business at Mahoney's, what goes on there. And not too many people say too much about the other things that happen, both in terms of what my dad's done with employees over the years and done with the family over the years. And there's, looking back on things, you may not know it, but he's quite the nautical guy, or at least he fancies himself to be so. And I'll just, two quick stories that I think you might enjoy about his nautical prowess. But one of them, we'll just call it a learning experience. The other one was quite well handled, I think. First one was many years ago, and I'd have to ask my mother exactly what year, but we rented a cottage down in Long Beach down in Gloucester. And a friend of my dad's was down there in the Gloucester area. Said, "Hey, Paul, here's the keys to my boat. Take it out for a spin." "Oh, sure, Charlie. Hey, come on, kids. Let's go, Doris. We're going for a boat ride." So just like when he goes skiing, he picks the days like we've been having lately, rainy, foggy. Let's go for a boat ride. So we climb in the boat. Yeah, Dad knows what he's doing. We drive out into Boston Harbor. The fog rolls in. He's out there clueless as to where we're going. My mother's there. "Mo, where's the land? When are we going back?" We're all sitting there, however many kids there were at the time. There was 3 or 4 of us anyways. Sitting there shivering in life jackets. "Dad, where are we going?" "France." Anyways, we're lucky. We found our way back, and that was okay. And so later on, he gets his own boat. And over time, he's starting to learn now how to be a real nautical type guy. So he's doing one of the things that he's been very good about and taking care of the employees. And I think there's a few people out here that may have even been on this trip. It was basically, at this time, he had a boat, said, come on down, we're going to do a beach party, go to the beach, clam bake, that sort of thing. Coming back, there was about 50 people on a 38-foot boat. And so the Coast Guard's driving around that night. They say, oh, this looks good. We're gonna see what's going on. So they come along, pull up alongside. They seem to have an awful lot of people on board here tonight. How many life jackets you have? Oh, we got plenty. Would like to count them. Okay, they're all up the front. No, that's all right. Just pass them on up through the cabin here. We'll count them. No problem. Start passing the guys, counting along. He gets up to about 85. And he's looking down, and the pile's not going down. He said, what's going on here? This is great. You guys got so many life jackets on board. I think, what do we actually have, about maybe 35 life jackets on board? Maybe not that many. They ended up going out the back door, passed up over the top of the boat, down through the front hatch. This guy knows about being nautical, I'll tell you. But that's not all. He's also a great hunter. We have a regular thing. It's become a regular thing now. We've got a company in Nova Scotia where we basically grow a lot of the Christmas trees that we bring in here to Winchester, our other nurseries, and basically ship around the world right now. So we have to go up there at least once a year to inspect what's going on and have a good time hunting. One little story about going up there hunting, this guy is the deer expert. Nobody knows more than deer than this guy here. Just ask him. So anyways, here's everybody sitting around the cabin one night, and one guy there dips into the whiskey a little bit, and he's talking about how he's the great deer hunter and all this sort of thing. So my dad's he's going to put him in his place. Walks around the corner, grabs a deer head off the wall, walks outside, starts doing this by the window. So this guy, his name's Jack, picks up the rifle, putting the bullet in it. He's about to put it right through the pane of glass at the deer head. Somebody thankfully stopped him. But yeah, we're all deer hunters. Yeah. But then there comes the family adventures, and I think some of these are, looking back on it, kind of separate from the business. Always number one in my dad's life has been the family, and I think speaking for all of us, we can really appreciate that. But even that has its interesting moments. And my earliest memory that I can think of goes back, I can vaguely remember being in the house on Cambridge Street way back whenever, I don't know what year it might be, and I suppose maybe I was a year or two old, and I was sitting there in the kitchen sink having my nightly bath, and I can remember my dad coming in the door from work, and that sticks in my mind as clear as anything that I can remember to this day. And I think that's kind of neat, because my dad, although he was working all the time, he was there when we needed him, and we really appreciate that. Although we didn't always see him all the time, and I think that comes up in another thing. Not too long after that, we're all a little bit bigger, and we're over at my grandmother's house, and we had just got done listening to a lecture from my mom about strangers. And keep away from strangers, because they can be bad. So we're walking out the back through, I guess it would have been the tool shed there in the back of in the back of that house. My father figures he's going to be a real joker now. And he comes through, walking out. My mother didn't know this was happening. Walking, you know those Groucho eyeglasses with the big nose? Says, and now we're all looking at him. I think there was three of us, myself, Peter, and I think you might have been there, Susan. We look, and the first thing that goes through our minds, being out there in the dark tool shed, is here comes a stranger to get us. So we're all yelling and screaming, and he said, "No, no, it's me." Oh, all right. But it just got better after that, because not long after that, now he figures he's going to introduce us, myself and my brother Peter anyways, to some of the niceties of society, and we go out to eat at Pier 4 in Boston. Big event. We're all sitting around waiting for food to come and all this sort of thing, and a couple violin players going around serenading people, and we're asking my dad about it, like, "Dude, what do these guys play?" And this sort of thing. He said, "Ask them to play Over the Wharf and I'll help you off." That was while my mother wasn't looking. So sure enough, hey, Dad knows what's going on. The violin players show up at our table. "Can we play something for you tonight?" Yeah. Smart kid, right? He remembers what Dad says. "Yeah, Over the Wharf and I'll help you off." These guys are looking at us, hey, damn little brats. I think he got more from my mother that night in one ear than he really cared for. Anyways, as time went on, we started doing more mischievous things as kids and getting into trouble on our own. And something different started to happen as we got older, especially in around high school age. And we're doing things up on the west side of town, getting into trouble up in the back fields and in the woods, in our cars, this sort of thing. It was funny because Dad was always a little bit quiet about a lot of these things that were going on. Most of the crap we got was from Ma. So he didn't really say too much, and we're starting to wonder, like, geez, what's going on? I mean, Dad doesn't really say too much. But then it became apparent when we started to help out with some of the class reunions that he was hosting, or parties for reunions he was hosting. And I look around the room here, and I see a lot of the fellow culprits out there that participated in some of his mischievous activities back in high school. Turns out this guy was doing stuff that put our stuff to shame. I wish I was doing the stuff he was doing back then. So anyways, a mystery was solved there. But anyways, a lot of the stuff you see at Mahoney's with the family and all that, a lot of the real backing comes from my mom. And I'd really like to acknowledge that. It was mentioned once earlier tonight. I think that's very, very important. A lot of times it's been my mom that's held things together sometimes, and she's kind of been, in a lot of ways, the backbone of a lot of things in the family and the business, and has really helped to hold things together for us. It becomes important when you're in a stressful situation sometimes, as we've found ourselves in the business, family conflicts, and it does get tough, and people got to stick together. And my mom really helps us in that way. It's really hard to stand here and try to say in a couple short words just how much that's really appreciated. I think it's great to have the town of Winchester recognize my dad for some of the many things that have been done over the years. And again, I like to say it from myself, Peter, Susan, Tommy, Michael, Laurie, the appreciation that we feel for him getting this award is very deep felt, and would like to say congratulations, Dad, and both to Mom and Dad. Guys, we love you. Thanks.
Well, we've arrived at the moment that we all came to witness, and the gentleman who will present the award tonight is the President of the Chamber of Commerce, Alan Iden.
Thank you very much, Sam. My notes say be brief, so I will be. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome you to this beautiful building And I want to remind you that we have the prospect now of another beautiful addition to Judkins Pond. And for that, we're fortunate to have Arthur Griffin here tonight. Who is also the source of this very flattering picture of Paul here. I want to remind Dr. McLean to keep smiling. I mean, he knows what I'm talking about. And on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome you all here and thank you for helping us to honor Paul. I want to thank all the speakers that have joined us here tonight in helping us honor Paul. I want to give a special thanks to John Sullivan, who couldn't be here, for all the years he's given us as MC here. He's a very capable MC, and to Sam for his who's absolutely superb job here tonight. Also want to thank Kathy Alexander and Betty Donahue. Betty, I'm surprised you have any hair. I called in to the office this morning and Betty was telling me that she was going crazy because nobody wanted to sit with anybody else. So, I also want to mention my involvement with the Chamber began 12 years ago on Judy Muge's sign bylaw committee along with Paul. So that's responsible for me standing here tonight. We've heard a lot of speakers here tonight, and I just want to echo their praise and add to it. Just say that the Chamber is very fortunate to have a member such as Paul, and we want to thank you for your generosity to both the Chamber and the town over the years, and be briefly just present you with a small token of our appreciation. Thank you very much, Paul. Do this. Here.
Photograph by Arthur.
And now the Citizen of the Year, Paul Mahoney.
Thank you very much. I know that applause is really because you know I'm the last speaker. You know, I did have a lot of things to say, and a lot of them have already been said about the number of people that the Chamber of Commerce and everybody that, how much I appreciate the award and everything that they've done. And without naming them all again, Alan just named them, but speaking as a group, and I think when the Chamber of Commerce was formed, and like they say, I remember getting together a little bit on a sign committee and talking about it. I see a change in Winchester. I think it's for the best that the businesses become more integrated in the community, and the business helps the community develop, and they work much better together than years ago. And I think that that's very necessary in America and our society, and I think you see that is what's happening in all over the world now. That the evidence is like what you see in Winchester Center, the development of the streets, the sidewalks, and so much of the improvements, the signs, and all the businesses. And the spearhead of that, I think, was the Chamber of Commerce, and a lot of the people in this room, and the town officials. I think that since we've had new managers like Chad and different things, and they recognize the need for this, the need to work together. And I think that I appreciate this award very much, because I think it helps recognize that a little bit. And I think that business is good for the town because, in my case, if I couldn't do business, I couldn't give shrubs. That's simple, and I think it works everywhere. And I think that, you know, the whole state, the whole government, everything can work a little bit more towards that. And I think that's what's got to be done more, and not just get all good things from tax revenues. I think if people work together, that things can be done a lot out of the goodness of people. I want to thank a lot the Winchester system. As I went through it, I started here in the 6th grade in the old Wyman School, and I can remember being blessed in one of my first days of class by Joe Forty, had just gotten out of the Army, a great master sergeant, and he said to me, "Mahoney, what would you do if somebody said dig a hole 6 feet long, 6 feet deep, and 3 feet wide?" Well, I thought it was kind of truthful. I said, well, I'd tell him to go jump in the river. In good form, he straightened me right out, which I needed. And he had me do some extra work, and one of them was learn a poem. So the next thing, that I wasn't through with my ordeal, I was up in front of the room reciting my poem that when a woodpecker pecked out a little round hole and made himself a home in the telephone pole. And as I was saying that, Kid Carlton winged a nice big eraser from the back of the room and right down my throat. So I decided to give up being a poet. I said, I got to do something else in life. But I thank Joe Forty for what he did in the beginning of the school, the first teacher, and all the way up through the many of them, like Frank Finnegan, one of the last I had, and my hockey coach for being understanding and gentle but firm and tough. I think that's important. I think a lot of the teachers, or most of them, are that way today, and they understand and they work with the people to get the best out of them. That's what I think is so important. I think we try to do that at Mahoney's. Everybody works. We have no top management, so to speak. The managers all have to work. It's part of the, that's why a lot of people, when they come to Mahoney's, don't know who the managers are, because they're dressed like everybody else and usually working harder than, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about a lot of the people that are here. I appreciate them all coming. I think that Mahoney's and Winchester are very much representative in a sense of what America is and what America should be and what I feel the world should be. So I mentioned a little bit, the schools are good. I know when I went from Winchester High, I went to BC, I was up against some pretty smart fellas coming out of BC High and some of the other schools, and I had to do a little bit of running. I thought I was pretty proficient in some of the courses till I met up with these fellas. And not that I was behind them, but I had to keep moving faster or I would have soon been behind them. But I thank the school system for that. I thank Winchester for what they did for me. And I sent my kids through the Winchester system. I probably could have afforded to send them to private schools. I opted not to. I want them to have the public system and work with it. And they're all here tonight, and I think the results are obvious. They've all gone from Winchester to Boston College, and they've done well. They're out the School of Management. They're involved in the business. The younger two are still undergraduates there. My friends from BC, you met Eddie Miller, Jim McIntyre, Paul McAdams. These are typical of the guys that I went to school with, and the BC system, the network working, and the Winchester High network. A lot of my friends are here, Skitchy Carroll, Joe Donlin, they're here. We've always, Bob Johnson, we always worked together. We've seen each other over the years. They're my best friends. They have both of these systems in the town and the college education, but also the business. I think getting people to work, the kids. I've seen so many over the years. I've even had fathers come to me and say, can you put my kid to work? I'd say, okay, and then they'd say, please put him with Munson, because I know he needs some straightening out. And the kids have come back to me that, you know, and I've seen them go on to bigger and better things. I'll never forget the boy that taught himself floor designing when he was going to BC, just on his own. Never going to a floor design school or anything. He became one of the best floor designers I ever saw, because he didn't stay with it. He's a doctor now. But the kids are so achieved in Winchester. No matter what you have them do, there's so many of them. And, you know, I remember one of the former town managers, and I saw the list of the kid, and I said, I better hire him as far as a town manager. You know, he's one of Winchester finest now, and he was one of the best workers we ever had, and he was fantastic. You know, I mean, that's just typical of what comes out of the Winchester system and a lot of the things, and I want to address that, and I want to thank people for that. Your tax money's not going to waste. I see a lot the elderly too. We try to, you know, if people want to go to work, we try to give them a few hours, and that was good years ago, because now of course you've got like the Jenks Center here, which is even better, because before years ago they didn't have such thing as this, and they needed something to take up their time. And we tried to address that, and that's always been a two-way street. We got a lot out of that. And we try to hire the kids, the old people, and everybody in between. Mahoney's has a $3.5 million payroll here in Winchester and Woburn. And that's a lot of payroll going in the local economies, and it's a lot of people who need it, a lot of people who spend a lot of hours not making a lot of money, but working a lot of hours. We have people this time of year, the last couple of weeks, that have worked 80 to 100 hours, you know, and they work very hard, and that enables them to make a decent wage, and they address the situation. I'm very thankful for that. I want to thank my friends, the Ancients, a lot of them here tonight to come to see me, get this award. As was briefly mentioned to you, that I am fortunate to win this election. Last week, the Ancient Normal Artillery Company, Massachusetts, which is the third oldest military group in the Western Hemisphere, the oldest being the Vatican Guards, the Swiss Vatican Guards, who guard the Pope. And we have one of them here among us tonight, representing them. Polycarp Führer. Brought over by one of our chaplains, Father McCabe. When we were fortunate to be their guests in London and then Rome, when we were in Rome, the guards took us, after we had a private audience with the Pope, took us down to their quarters, gave us a few of those nice Swiss beers, gave a tour of their quarters, which you see them in their finery with the spears and the hats, and you see them on the TV. These fellas are well-trained, a highly trained military group, well-equipped to handle anything, and I mean anything that could come their way. I was very impressed with their armory and everything, and Before that, we were in London as a guest of the Honorable Artillery Company of London, and I had an interesting story. We went into the inner circle of Buckingham Palace, and we went to another palace on the Thames, where they made that movie where Henry VIII unfortunately took care of his wives. What was the name of that castle? Do you remember, Father? On the Thames with Jimmy, what was that? No, the one they made the movie at. We were in the Great Hall. We met the Duke of Kent. Well, anyway, Hampton Court, absolutely, Hampton Court. The reason I want to tell this story is because, to me, it was what the ancients are all about, in the sense that we just met the Duke of Kent, who was a member of the English royalty family, and we were in the Great Hall of this Hampton Court. And I was seated with an older couple, and they asked me where was I from. I said, I'm from Winchester, Mass. And they said, oh my goodness, how nice to see you. We're from Winchester, England, and we do a lot of writing back and forth, which I was unaware of. They said to me, we're so glad you people came. I said, why? They said, well, we're 84 years old. We live 7 kilometers from this castle, and we've never been able to get in here. It took you people to come and open the doors for us. So I was so overwhelmed by this trip, I responded and invited the Honorable Artillery Company of London when they came to help us celebrate our 350th anniversary 2 years ago in Boston. I invited them here to Winchester. They came to my greenhouse, and they put on a tattoo, which is a little parade and ceremony with they were dressed up in their red coats and their high felt hats, just as you see them at Buckingham Palace. And I had to keep it quite quiet because of security reasons. It was very impressive. They came down in a motorcade, a Army motorcade down Route 3, and went in there, and we had a great time. There was about 200 of them. And they've been very appreciative. But that camaraderie, as I see in BC, as a family, as Winchester High, as the ancients, you can see here, brings everybody together, and business people, and I think it all works together. And I think that that's what America's about, and I appreciate this very much.